technology. So we can't thank you enough for that as being one of our many valued customers, but we're just privileged to have you today. So um, with that, I thought maybe I would just open up because we're going to talk a lot about this book here. I know I can't see it very well with the, but flip the script, right? We're going to talk a lot about that. It's really using tactical empathy, flip the script to turn around tough talks into breakthrough results. So I bet everybody on this call has had those moments in their work life, in their personal life, around how to turn tough talks into that. But I'm going to really, real quick, just to kick this off because I thought it would be fun, I am going to read the first paragraph of Amy's book, and then we'll let Amy talk about her how her Winsome background. That Winsome is the name of her farm. So
Yep.
here it is. Amy's chapter is Empathy in Action, Navigating Legacy Negotiations with Tactical Precision. Here, they canceled the leases, my husband said. And in that instant, my world collapsed, shattered like an unexpected death, leaving me stunned, scared, and utterly heartbroken as I looked out our living room window to the land that stretched beyond it. His words going round and round in my head hit me like this land held more than crops. It held our history, our hopes, and our dreams. Now that pulls you right in and right away, right? And so thank you, Amy, for that. Thank you for writing this book. So let's talk about you and how, let's talk about Winsome Farms, how tell me your story. Tell us all your story, not just me, everybody on the call.
Yeah, so how we ended up getting into that chapter, or this chapter evolving, was so me and my husband have been married 28 years.
Yep.
We got married when we were 22, 23 years old, and had our first son with, probably less than a year after we got married. But a year and a half into our marriage, my mother-in-law had passed away. So my husband actually, his father committed suicide in the 80s during that recession. And then fast forward,
Still a problem today, right?
yeah,
Still a problem
yes, like
today.
when, yes, very much so. I'm very passionate about what's happening
Yeah.
right now in today's world because I know the impact it can have for generations
Yep.
past, this difficult time that everybody's kind of going through. And then, so I married him a year and a half after we get married. His mom has an accident and she passes away. And so immediately we're kind of thrusted into a farming operation. We were already involved anyways, him and his brother very heavily, but we kind of stepped up even more in that particular time. Me more in a supportive role because I did not
Mhm.
grow up in farming. My mom grew up on a farm. I did not. I grew
Mhm.
up between Denver and Colorado Springs along the Front Range. So that kind of leads into more of like my passion for agriculture and kind of how the land is treated.
Mhm.
But anyways, his mom passes, and then we're farming with his brother and his grandpa. Several years later, then we end up splitting because families really struggle. Sometimes we do really good on the outside, but there's a lot of stress and sadness that goes along that maybe doesn't always get dealt with.
Yep.
So we end up splitting off on our own. We start our own farm. We're still farming for the family. We're renting the ground. His brother's renting part, half of the farm also, and him and my sister-in-law, who I adore. Um, but very difficult time, very
Yeah.
emotional. So,
Yeah.
we keep having these emotional moments of like lose his mom, then we separate and, start farming on our own, and that loss, and always trying to get some stability going. And fast forward to um, our lease is being canceled. So, at this point now we have three boys. We've kind of built a history here. We took on the operational side of the business, not the land side per se.
Mhm.
And we're sitting here in this moment of the leases being canceled by a lawyer and trusts and things like that, and just sitting
Mhm.
there thinking, um, there's so much more to this than just, you know, you're not, it wasn't because we weren't doing a good job. And
Right, right. And I think in your book you talk about how hard you worked on that land and the basically the blood, sweat and tears you put into it over those years, right prior to that moment.
yeah,
And
and
you're now just to kind of back up a little bit. Your
mhm,
farm is located where and kind of just your overall general operations. We talked a little bit about that earlier, but yeah, before we got
yeah,
on the
we're in Southwest Kansas, Johnson, Kansas, in the southwest corner.
Yep.
Um, we have farms anywhere, the family had a pretty substantial amount of ground when we split off, but we've been anywhere from almost 20,000 acres to now we're down to about 9,000 acres. Um, we've done, his grandpa had a feed yard. They've sold the feed yard to a dairy. Now we have pasture land that we graze our own cattle on. So we got back into cattle. Um, we've done irrigated, we've done dry. We've really done quite a verse amount of um, different types of operations in this whole
Right.
time frame. Sorry, there's a fly that's gonna bug us
That's
the
all
whole
right.
time. So yeah, we're in and an interesting part of the country considering we sat over the Ogallala Aquifer. So we've
Mhm.
done a lot of irrigation, but at this point we're looking at, mostly dry land. So
Okay.
as we watch that kind of change.
Yep. So
Always changing out of
yeah,
there.
yeah, right. And so you said that over those years your acres have fluctuated. Can you kind of give insight on why that, you don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, no. I think that's one of those things that, farmers were always so quiet about. Like it's asking like how much money somebody has in their bank account. But
Right.
I always like being transparent. Like,
Yep.
so when we left the other farm, we were used to farming like big acres.
Yep.
And there used to be a mindset of more acres, more efficiency, you use your equipment a certain way. So you kind of get trained and brought up a certain, like doing certain things.
Yep.
So when we split off from the family, there was an opportunity to rent another, oh gosh, was it like, I think it was like 6,000 acres. Um, but not too far from here, but it
Yep.
was a satellite to me, another county. So we were having to farm it. We did that a couple of years. It was actually in insurance issues.
Uh-huh.
And so not everybody wanted to jump in and take that on. We did a very good job, I will say, and took it on and went through an audit and did a very good job. I wish I could have gotten a resume from the auditors who did that, but
Yeah.
you don't really get that. I was like,
Right.
I need your gold stamp. But so at that point, we knew when we went to Washington, D.C., that things were changing. And I looked at my husband and said, do you want to farm out of fear or do you want to farm out of like good choices?
Yeah.
And we kind of knew that that particular farm, maybe the quality wasn't there, and somebody was offering the landlord $5 more an acre.
Yep.
We said, take it. You'd
Yeah.
be silly not to take it. So
Yeah.
we let that go away.
Well, I think people are making those decisions, all I think throughout the history of farming, people have
Yeah,
always made those kind of decisions. So I appreciate you sharing that.
yeah. So,
So you are extremely busy. There's no doubt about it. And,
mhm,
what, you kind of, I think, led into it a little bit, but with, what happened on your farm. But, it's really interesting to me, having never spoke to an author before, what kind of give us the, driving force about how this all came about writing in this book,
mhm.
that is a number one bestseller, and
Yeah,
how you got involved in that whole process. I think everybody on the webinar today or the podcast here today would be interested in understanding that. So tell us
yeah,
about what the driving force was about co-authoring and how you got involved in that whole process.
yeah. So I'm gonna kind of start off where I left with I'm sitting in this moment with my husband, or just even feeling very alone in it. I
Yeah.
mean, and wondering how are we
That
gonna
minute when
navigate it.
the leases, right? That kind of transition in your life where parents are, Something's
They're
happened to the
gone.
parents. Yep. Yep. Okay.
The
Gotcha.
leases get canceled. My
Yep.
husband's sitting there. And at that point, I've always tried to be a support person because I didn't grow up in this, right? It's
Yep.
not, didn't start off as my family farm, didn't start off as my thing.
Well, you've certainly dove in head first.
Yeah, yeah. Or maybe got pushed in the deep end. I'm not
Well,
quite sure.
that was
You know.
maybe not. That's maybe not. That's not the. Yeah, that's probably more
So
appropriate.
so this first time, our leases kind of get canceled. I kind of step back and let him lead, but try to be supportive. And I'm like, here's some ways that maybe you can, navigate or have these difficult conversations. And one of those things that I had found was Chris Voss's, negotiation. I'm like, oh, this is, interesting.
Right.
So I kind of give it to him, and he's, looking at it and kind of trying. But then fast forward.
Just to give everybody a little context about Chris Voss. Chris Voss was the FBI's #1 negotiator. And he actually kind of wrote the training manual on how to negotiate with terrorists, kidnappers, all those sort of things. So high stress situations. Am I correct in that?
Yes, and even one of the, crisis hotlines, like so there'll be a podcast or not a podcast. There'll be an interview coming out of me and Chris talking. And one of the questions I was asking him a specific question, like how do you set in really difficult conversations when you can't just exit, but you got to like have this conversation. And it was really interesting him talking about his response to that question and
Yeah.
crisis hotline, how that like it's really interesting how much you use negotiation in your whole life, but in crisis situations, yeah, how much experience he's had.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, back to the point of so you were working to co-author this. You dove right in. How did that all occur?
So then we get to like in the chapter of my book, I talk about how this kind of evolution happened with me wanting to learn more about
Mhm.
negotiating. And the different people along that journey to I'm sitting I've been working on my own book for the last few years because in that moment of sitting there looking out the window thinking this will never be the same again
Right.
and how much I really wanted to capture the beauty of it because it was never going to look and feel the same for me again.
Right.
Not to mention the loss of water happening here. It wasn't going to look. So I dove in and was encouraged by friends, write as I processed my grief to write and do a lot of writing. And I took pictures. I love photography. So I made sure I captured the beauty from my perspective
Right.
and was doing a lot of writing. So I knew I wanted to publish my own book. And
Okay.
then we get an email saying that Chris is going to be doing a book and he was interested in anybody who had a story. And if we thought we had a story to share, whoever he sent, I guess, mass emailed it, to show up to a Zoom call and they'd be talking about it. And so I was like, oh, one, I have a story.
Right. Yeah.
And two, I was like, well, it'd be really good to know how to do a book. There's 100 different ways you can do a book, self-published, different ways. And I thought, well, it'd be a good idea of knowing how I would want to handle mine.
Yeah.
Um, so had a story, submitted my story, and they liked it. And I was one of, a few in the chapter. So,
Right.
or in the book.
How long did that process take?
Oh my gosh, they were so like the this particular company does lots of these. So they are very well versed in how to put a book together, how to promote a book, how to walk you through this process. Um, but I believe they're kind of veering away from the book um, platform and working more on documentaries.
Hmm.
The gentleman that actually owns this particular company that worked with Chris and he worked with oh, I was trying to think the gentleman's name who did Chicken Soup for the Soul or uh, all those series.
Yeah.
They worked with him doing some different book. Kathy Lee Gifford, I believe
Oh,
they
wow. Yeah.
worked with her on some of that stuff. But the gentleman who owns this particular company announced at the end of this year that he's wanting to focus on doing 100 documentaries. I want to say 100 in a year or something like that. And his goal is to touch as many people as possible. I
Yeah.
think it's just fascinating. He's just a
That is very fascinating. Yeah. Are they
yes.
going to do a documentary on your particular story? Do you know?
I have not heard anything about
Okay.
my particular
All right.
story, but I wish he would do more with agriculture. He's done several documentaries that are pretty fascinating, but
Yeah.
so anyways, they had the platform down. It didn't take but maybe well, it was just this year. I mean, just say
Yeah.
it was the start of 25 to it being out by July.
Well, that's because a lot of people are like, how do you write a book? How do you even go through that process, right? So I appreciate you sharing that because that
So
that's
one thing,
interesting.
yeah. So like me, I had a story. I had a very good story. Um, they have a ghostwriter that will help you go through yours as much or as little as you would like.
Yeah.
So of course you got to have somebody who is cohesive over the whole book.
Hmm.
You're
Right.
pulling together several different stories. So depending on um how involved you wanted to be in that process. And then of course, Chris is involved, with it's his book. So
Yeah.
you gotta have interaction with him and his plan for it. And then it goes to publication. Uh,
Right.
they're gonna have the audio is gonna be done hopefully here in like a month or something like that. So there's not
Okay.
been an audio release yet. It'll be released here. You could in this particular group, you could do your own audio if you wanted to. Let's be honest, I did not want to. I want the guy who does,
Right. Yeah,
I can't think of his name right now.
James Earl Jones or someone.
Yes.
They're like,
Yeah, like if
right.
I'm picking, it's not my
Right. Yeah.
voice.
No, it should be in your voice because it's your emotions that are coming through in that book. You lived
Yeah.
it. So I think you should, not that you need advice from me, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think you should reconsider it because you do a fantastic job. So yours is very agricultural specific, and
Yes.
you're in that you're trying to think of these relationships and these legacy conversations, and how to reframe these conversations with people. So when you were thinking of the business or the book construct, right? I mean,
Yep.
for people on this podcast today, what could they, from a as you went through it, you probably had, I want to talk about this, I want to talk about these things, I want to talk about share these insights. What, kind of so people are continue to think, oh, I really want to learn more about that. Can you share some of the top insights that you kind of worked on through? You've shared some of them, I think, and through some of your conversations, but maybe just kind of go through a bulleted list of things that you wanted to share for, from the top insights on the chapter that you wrote and flip the script.
I don't know that I had like bullet points. I know from I just wanted to share a side of agriculture that people don't always get the window into looking at.
Yeah.
So like I know it from both sides being I'm the tenant and I'm the landlord
Yep.
and I've had to deal with, trusts and I've had to deal with lawyers and I had to do all that. But the private conversations that happen with maybe your spouse or the stress of it being on the wife side of I just wanted to share that in a way so that maybe others got a perspective that maybe they don't get to sit in sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, and I wanted it to be an advocate for agriculture in general that, we as an industry do these negotiations like a lot.
Right.
You don't
Right.
really, unless you're a part of agriculture, realize, the stakes are always high
Yeah.
all the time.
Hmm.
There's a level of stress that I think, unless you're in the industry, do you get? Um, And we
Yeah.
almost, get numb to it a little bit until you have like years like this year where it's like you can't numb it out enough.
Yeah. Right. Certainly.
Um, so
Certainly.
that was my goal in it. And I'm just one of those that like to connect with people anyway. So I feel like if I'm authentic in my story,
Yep.
then it just resonates
Yeah.
more than like I want to hit this piece, and this piece in it. It was more like, no, this if I had to think of a difficult time where I applied the technique, I knew it was that moment because trust me, as I'm driving over to have this difficult conversation, the night before, I was just like, I'm done. I'm done with life. And I don't know how many times I'd, said that
Right.
to myself over the years. That I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the hard thing. I'm gonna try the thing that, didn't feel easy.
Right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah. So um, so as you went over to have those, let's say these, you say, the book starts out with this internal family, breakup of land really is what it is, right? And
Yeah.
how it's controlled. As you were, and you say you gave this negotiations book to your spouse, right? You of course read it, and you were trying. So how did you? Can you share with our listeners today? Some of the things that you did that you wanted to make sure you hit on. What are some of the best techniques that you used that were successful?
Yeah, so like that was another thing when Chris sent the empathy, the tactical empathy has become a big, in my opinion, with psychology and everything, empathy.
Right.
And so when Chris hit the empathy piece, I was like, oh yeah, like um I an example being, I think we feel with negotiation, it's like a power play and who ends up with the power, where I believe like even in my chapter, it's more about listening and being empathetic to where the other person's coming from and looking for the opportunities
Yeah.
more than like if you do this, I do this. If you move this way, then I move this way. Or
Right.
um there's a little bit of like those type conversations, but overall if you can empathize with the other person, I feel like there's a way to move forward.
Yeah.
Or to decide it's not your thing. Like that's
Yeah.
another hard truth in it. Maybe by the time you have all the information, you're like, no, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
But staying in that and being empathetic. So a tactic being like in my chapter where I could have easily just reacted and um tried to come in with a power move.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was more, hey, I'm just going to be open and honest with you and say, listen, I do better when you fill in the blanks versus leaving me in the unknown. Because if you leave me in the unknown, I'm gonna always go to the negative. And can we
Uh,
can we have it? It was getting the buy-in of that. Can we
yeah.
agree that this is something we can work towards?
Interesting. So you're saying like you want the detail,
Yeah.
right? Whatever that detail is, right, may not be good for your best interest or your
Yeah.
farm's best interest. Give me the detail,
Yeah.
and then I'll work through those. And I hear what you're saying, right? Don't go in there
Mhm.
with guns a-blazing and winning, trying to win the day.
Yeah.
But go in there with that empathy that you talked about, and then once you get that detail, um, it keeps you from going negative.
Or more like the thousand negatives. So getting the
A
buy-in
thousand
because
negatives, that's fair.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
like in that particular instance, me and you have talked about before, but like if you it was getting the buy-in of like, do we agree this is how we want to move forward? And that person could say no, but that is so much more vulnerable to say, can we agree?
Yeah.
And then that person says no, well, that's good information. Okay, well, I'm not in a place that's safe because they're not going to give me the information. Is that
Right.
really a person I want to keep working on a negotiation with?
Right.
All of it's good information, but sometimes our amygdala wants to be like, no, like this is, you know, don't touch that, don't say that, don't go there.
Yep.
And keeping yourself grounded enough to be able to say, okay, I'm going to do the hard thing, which is I'm going to tell you this is who I am. Can we have that agree? And as soon as that happened, great, it went the right direction. He's like, yes. Didn't mean that was going to happen all the time. Didn't mean we didn't still have bumps later. But then
Right.
there's that conversation of like, okay, I thought we agreed we would do this. Can we reset that and come back? Those are the negotiation pieces.
Yeah.
You're building a foundation, in my opinion, of can we dance in this and come up with something that works?
Hmm. Interesting. Okay, so that makes sense. And has that, so since you've kind of applied those techniques, right?
Mhm.
First, especially so did that help with, with have you has that technique been used over and over again and you found that to be successful? I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I guess I'm trying to dig a
Yeah.
little deeper on this question around, that moment. Did you have that knowledge when you first got, 18 or 20 years ago, or however many years ago it's been, when that family farm kind of, you didn't have that, right? And so you knew that you had to develop that skill set, you and your husband, of negotiations and how to handle that. And again, the flip the script talks a lot about that, not in your case, but with others as well. Um, so when you applied that, has that been a pretty successful with now building back and building up your farm? And maybe it's even with, talking to people, around the globe about, you know, delegates with other, from other countries about agriculture. Have you applied that not only on lease negotiations, but other important, things to help promote your farm and promote agriculture across the United
Yeah.
States?
Yes, I believe it's helped. Like even with so like I said earlier, we had well, nobody on here knows, but me and you know.
Right.
There was a Chinese trade team that came through that had dinner at our place. And here's such a difficult time in ag, right? And
Right.
everybody's talking about them. And even I'm like, I would say a technique that I do use that I've just been applying in the last few years, I do a prep sheet for myself of like, what is it I'm
Oh,
really wanting? What is
that's
it
a
that
good.
what's most important to me, what might not be as important to me, and kind of being prepared.
Yeah.
Um, that has been extremely helpful for me. I had, a coach that kind of helped me in that realm of like, okay, where are you in it? Because with the trade team coming through, I had to get really clear with myself, like, what's my goal? What am I
Right.
trying to do? What would be successful to me? What things would I not want to come from it? And I would say several years ago, being in a room with somebody that was very powerful in my industry, and I hope to be able to redo a conversation with him someday
Yeah.
because I'm so much older and wiser now. And I'm like, I would have rather sat in that uncomfortableness and learned more about him. Fast forward to the trade team, I was like, okay, my goal is I want them to have a good time. I want to do the best I can to promote. And if they leave with a good attitude about us and sorghum, is that then a success for me? Yes, it was.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that's, you know, not necessarily a negotiation piece, but when I'm sitting there and there's difficult things maybe brought up while they're here or things are talked about, then I know where I'm setting in that. Like
Yeah.
maybe I don't want to have that conversation because my goal is for you to leave happy, and you might not want to be that vulnerable in that moment.
I like that. I like that idea of writing down what you want to, goals that want to have, and goals that, outcomes that you don't want to have, right? I think
Yeah.
that's a really good suggestion. Well, I'm going to pause right there because I want to make sure that if does anybody have a question for Amy? We've been just kind of chit-chatting here and having a great old time, but the purpose of these are just to, if you have a question, you can put it in the chat or you can come off mute. Does anyone on the uh, webinar today have a question for Amy? Something that she said? Let's see. You can put it in the chat or you can come off mute. All right. Well, you again, you don't have to be shy. You can come off here, Amy. You can see
Yes.
Amy's very willing to share of her knowledge, right? I always say two things, Amy, in life. There's the two most valuable things any person can give anyone, that they know or don't know for that matter, and that's your time and your knowledge. And we, of course, certainly thank you for yours today.
Yeah,
Um, so I have a question here. So, and under the book's new, and have you had anybody contact you yet? And what have they said about your writings?
yes, I've had like a couple of people email me and been excited and want to connect, mostly some about agriculture, some about how, like you said, how do you get a book done or how do you do that?
Right,
Um, and all of it's been positive. I
right.
know leading up to this has been an interesting thing with this journey of like writing and have now I have one book out working on my own personal book. The vulnerability can really, invoke things with people. So, writing, um, you an example being like my dad's like, "You're not writing about me, are you?" And I'm like, "Of course I am. You're a man in my life." Like, what are you worried about? Like,
Right.
but I mean, it is, for the people around you can be, scary.
Yeah.
Because it's like
Sure.
we were talking earlier, the unknown. And
Yeah.
so the unknown, we just are biased in our unknowns to be like more negative than positive. It's
Right.
just, we were talking about this a little bit ago about, your amygdala kicks in and you're like, we've been surviving for centuries. It's,
Yeah.
you needed to know where the scary tiger was.
Yeah.
You're not going to be like, hey, let me think that the tiger's not going to eat me. No, I'm going to think a thousand ways the tiger is going to eat me. And
Yeah.
so, when you're writing and publishing things, it can really, pull out some emotions around people, but just trusting that process. And I think the more you write, I'm sure the more people trust, what your intentions are.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing that because I think in times, good times and bad times, I wish, I think what you said about journaling or writing helps you, from a overall psychology perspective, right? Kind of
Mhm.
keeping things in your mind. So I think that's a really good way to help, and there's other methods I'm sure out there as well. Um, if you don't mind me asking, we didn't talk about this, but what's the concept of your new book?
I'm actually it's more of a memoir, the whole like my journey from because I've had a lot of things um happen in my life. And I had friends encourage me. They're like, Amy, you have a really cool story. You need to tell your story. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I really? You think it's that cool? Like people will read it.
right.
And so the process of kind of going through people saying it's a good story. I'm a horrible speller, like horrible. I'm so grateful for AI and
Guilty as charged.
yeah, like all this stuff. I would be in therapy with my therapist, and they're like, "You need to write down this stuff," and I'm like, I'm gonna misspell it. They're like, "I don't want to
Uh,
hear how you're gonna misspell it. Just write it down." I'm like, I know. Um, and so overcoming that and having so many people tell me that they were not good number one sellers couldn't spell. I'm like, no way. Um, and then also getting into them asking me about, you know, sharing certain parts of my story and then
Yep.
being like, yeah, you really should do a lot of encouragement. And then fast forward to my grandma's, I think it was her 80th birthday, one of my grandma Joe, her 80th birthday, I believe it was, and her cousins and family came that I haven't really met up until that point. I've heard their names or whatever.
Yeah.
Four of them had written their own books. They
Oh,
all
wow.
sent me their books.
Well, you
And I'm
come
like,
from a long line then of
yeah,
book writers.
I'm like,
You
if
didn't
they
you didn't
can
even know
they're
that.
like, Amy, we've written our books. We'll share them. And like, you should totally write your book. And I'm like, okay, if my family
That's
can do
really
it, then
cool.
I can do it. So I think sometimes putting out there to the universe what you're wanting And it's amazing the things that start showing up to support the things that, are ultimately
Yeah.
what you should do.
Yeah. Now we got a question coming in, so I'm
Yeah.
going to ask it. So in this book, there's also other writers with
Mhm.
different negotiation tactics, different ways to handle tough situations, and tough talks to get those breakthroughs. What particular, what have you learned from the other authors that are in here?
I think what I've learned overall is that, we all have different things that we learn or that we specialize in or that we have to contribute. And having a good support system like the people in this book um, just makes you overall better.
Yeah.
Um, that it is a journey. Like, unless you're Chris Voss and you really want to invest your livelihood and this is what you do every day, like, I have no desire to be a hostage negotiator. to learn to learn how to do this, you know, like that.
Yeah.
I have no desire to be a referee so that I can take personal criticism better. There's a
Right.
gentleman that wrote a book about that. Like, he legit wanted to be able to take harsh feedback and went and became a coach, basketball coach, or
Yeah.
not coach, a ref. Because
Yeah.
let's be honest, if you've ever sat in a high school gym and listened to the refs getting yelled at, you get really good at taking, harsh feedback.
Right.
And I'm like, but I have no desire to be that person either. So,
Yeah, but it's good to learn from that, right? I mean, there are things that you can take from that, right? Yeah.
right.
Whether
And
I
just
don't
like,
want to do it or, there are some certain techniques in there. If I did ever get in that situation, I could apply
yes,
that, right?
yes,
Yeah.
which is what these guys all share in their chapters is like, here is, a
Yeah.
situation that might resonate with you. And let's be honest, if something resonates, we tend to hold on to it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No. And you know what I've always found through, reading books and having books is what I like about a book is there's going to be times throughout your, personal life, your career, whatever that may be, and you're like, I remember reading something about, negotiation tactics or lease, how to handle leases or what I need to do to, where to the negative, right? What to do when, I don't have enough information and and that's what I love about having something that's hard like this, because you can't see it, but in my office, I have a book, and this is going to go on that shelf as well, about, I know I read something about that. And what I think makes this book so, in my personal opinion, and I would
mhm,
recommend everybody on the call to go out to Amazon and search for it, that it's better to have, it's nice when somebody like Chris Voss shares that kind of those techniques and those things that you can use, but it's really more powerful when someone's giving it to you firsthand on how they did those things, right? um
mhm,
I read a book a long time ago, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? And it's kind of got a weird title, but by Carnegie.
mhm,
What I enjoyed mostly about that book is the fact that it gave real world examples of leaders, how they used that technique or what they did you know, to get a desired outcome or help them in a tough situation. So that's exactly what I enjoyed about this book as well, is that you're giving those real world examples, and it's value. They're like little golden nuggets, like gold
mhm.
nuggets in there to learn from. And that's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like you said, that you see yourself or you resonate with that story from
Yep.
there's something in your life or your own personal experience that really then it sticks with you more
Yep.
than, like sitting in a classroom and just having somebody say do X, Y, and Z. When you
Yeah.
can actually see it and it relates to your life, you're like, oh, okay, I can apply that or I remember that or
Yeah.
and I think that's how we all stay connected in general, whether
Yep.
that's a book or a story or documentary or whatever. When you can
Absolutely.
see somebody else make the steps forward, you're like, oh, I can do that too.
Yep.
Um,
Right. Right.
and so that's where like I genuinely when Chris was talking about, I'm like, oh, this is actually a skill set. Like This
Right.
isn't just something that somebody's born really good at, maybe, but that you can actually learn it and apply it and make better conversations. I feel like it's a better conversation. Now,
Hmm.
there is a girlfriend of mine, her name's Joanna, and I might say her last name wrong, but Dashel. That's who I ended up hiring as a coach. She actually was doing it for like divorce and things like that,
Uh-huh.
teaching people negotiation and that. But she came from a corporate world where they do that stuff all the time.
Hmm.
They're high stakes negotiation between different companies, whether you're in tech or other things. Well, she's good at that. Like that was,
Right.
and so having her versus I couldn't hire Chris, but he does have people to help you learn those skills. I had Joanna helping me a little bit and coaching me along and just learning um that you can really do this. It
Yeah.
is a skill you can learn, even if
Yeah.
you're not going to be on hostage, not, lines.
Yeah. And it takes practice, right? You got to continue to
Yes.
practice and put it in place. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to pause there. Any questions? Any further questions? You can come off mute, ask Amy a question if you want. Let's see. Let me check it real quick.
I do encourage people if, you can look up the people that did this particular book, or there's different ways to, like I said, you can self-publish, you can ebook anymore. You can, depending on how much money you want to spend
Yeah.
and how much time you want to give to it and the purpose of what you're doing with it. So like right now, I do have a ghostwriter helping. I wrote, mine, but to write a memoir is like 60,000 words. You think that, you know, there's a part that's like, oh, that's a lot, or maybe that's not a lot. But once you start writing like 30,000 words, you realize
Yeah.
60,000 is a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. For
that
sure.
having this particular person has published several number one best-selling memoirs, but the reason I had him go through mine is I don't know that answer. Is it
Yeah.
worth going and looking at a publishing company? Is it worth just e-publishing my particular deal? And so I always think it's good to hire people, or at least surround yourself with people who have done it before,
Right.
good at doing it.
Yeah.
um and because I don't need to reinvent the wheel on
Yeah.
any most
Right.
things anymore.
Yeah.
So um if that's I would just encourage, if that's something you're thinking about, find somebody who you trust to give you that like advice.
Absolutely. No, that's a good recommendation. Well, we'll just try to bring this thing home here. And one, I can't thank you enough for the time you spent with us today. But we are a digital company, right? And a digital lease management company. And we are so honored to have you, as we are with all of our customers, to use our platform. And I'm going to ask electronic or digitization question for you
Yeah.
around this, just because um, you have familiarity with our platform. But
Hmm.
on these negotiations, and you think about securing the lease, making sure that you have that lease for the years to come.
Yep.
How do you think, how do you feel like this, like digitization process, the relationships management process, which is extremely important, that you've hit
Yep.
on that throughout our conversation today. Where do you think that's a fit in the future with farming, contract management, lease management? I mean, I'm just curious on, to get a little, I mean, we try to get feedback from you, routinely, but
Yeah.
how are you maybe seeing it in a broader picture?
Well, one, it's always been a part of where things, well, that's not true. Now that I think about it, like Brant's grandpa, like the first time we had to negotiate with him, um, like Brant's sitting across negotiating for his, he's like, why can't we just do a handshake? So, I mean, you think
Right,
just two generations ago, it was all handshake.
right.
Now, we're required to put things more in paper and document. Even in the ranching industry, I see that, there's not necessarily been a ton of leases on renting ranch land, but I think FSA and all that starting to require a little bit more of that type of,
Yep,
hey, what is actually your agreement?
yep.
Um, And then fast forward, I know like blockchain and things like that are going to become more prevalent in what your lease is. So I just think it's going to get more digitized in those type of contracts.
Yep.
That said, even being transparent, you guys loaded up my leases and there was like one little thing that didn't kind of jive, even though overall, like a little bit further down, it matched what we were saying.
Right.
It's amazing how many mistakes can happen when you're dealing with such a big document, even if you
Right.
do have a lawyer. So I just,
You're
uh,
saying that that the system found that there was that you weren't getting something or whatever that
or
was.
that it didn't kind of line up with, itself, maybe in one paragraph down to like something a little bit further down.
Right.
The
You
contract
were
was
missing
still good,
something. Yeah. Yeah.
but there was a little bit of wordage that should have probably been placed in another paragraph. I
Right.
know that happens quite often.
Sure.
And over the years of, like I said, we do this a lot in
Right. What
our
was the
culture.
impact? What was it? I know we talked about it. What
I
was
think it
that?
was like the 1/3 irrigation or like
Something about
irrigation
yes.
was mentioned, maybe not in that paragraph, but then down in the exhibit, it was in there
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah. No. And that
So
was
there's
something
just,
that was missed that you were missing by doing it, year over year, right? Something that was
or
missed, you guys.
or maybe like copy and paste and somebody got the least different, or
Right.
there's so much to these contracts and they can change, like one thing gets decided and the whole thing can change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and being able to, you're paying people lots of money to look at them. It's like, okay, am I going to pay the lawyer another, $300 to go through
Right.
this thing again for the hundredth time? Or do
Right.
you just trust that it's written right and you sign it and you go on? And like I said, me and you, like you could be doing this every year. There's certain landlords that we have, like KU being one of them. You sign a contract, a new contract every year.
Yeah.
It might be the same. They might have like amended something in there. You might have done something, but that's a lot of mental work that
Yeah.
I think like your guys' platform and others will help. Um, and especially with like the AI stuff coming in, you can be like, okay, like highlight what's different from last year,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
you're not having to reread the whole document.
Right. So it just easier review, easier overall lease structure, being able to have that information at your fingertips whenever you want it, right? And not
Yep. And mentally taking some of that load off.
and get some and it by going through that by digitizing it picks up some of those areas that you may have missed. Am I is that a summary?
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And it'll make it easier if you want to, change something or look at something.
Yeah.
Maybe I
Right.
want to go from a 1/3, 2/3 to an 80/20, or what does that look like? I think your guys' platform will make it easier to run those typical
Yep.
scenarios for like a land management perspective,
Yep.
but also make it easier for the tenants to get that information also.
Yeah.
I'm hope, the more we can give information, not overload information, but more precise information,
Yep.
I think the more mental load it takes off.
Awesome. Yeah. So having that, yeah, we didn't really talk about that, but just having that back to your maintaining that high level of, openness and I guess making sure what the part I liked was the making sure of, everything there's clarity, right? Here's what we did for you on that. Here's what we did on that farm this year, and here's the expenses, and here's the payments, and all those things. You're giving that to the landowner, and it takes away that thousand ways that they could go negative on it, right? Because it's right there in the system. That's a good thought. I
Well,
appreciate you
yeah.
sharing that because I mean, in the book, I was like, that's exactly what we're trying to do as a technology as well. Keep that ground in control of your farm, right? And it's imperative. It's
Well,
imperative to the
and look at a year
success.
like this. Like
Yeah.
we're in such a downturn. How do you approach that conversation from like a tenant to a landlord
Yeah.
perspective? How do you approach that conversation? Well, at the same time, if everybody can transparently see, listen, I'm not making a ton.
Yeah.
You're let's find something that's workable.
Yeah.
I think for years we've had to try to, you know, give those numbers and build trust, but the generations are changing so fast
Right. Yeah.
that, you know, a handshake ain't gonna always do it anymore.
That's hard to shake hands when somebody's in California and you're in, you know what I mean? It's hard to do
I
all
don't
that.
know. I did pretty good with my landlord in Florida, who now I'm going to be calling since you said it was so cold down there and saying, "How are you doing?"
Yeah, it was cold. It was.
Yes, yes.
So anyway,
But
well,
yeah,
thank you for that. Yes, that really appreciate you kind of elaborating more on how digitization of leasing and the relationships and the payments are all going to be imperative for scalability, maintaining land control, all those different aspects, right? And
yes.
keeping those folks that you're working with, you know, like you said, the now it's going from one or two landowners to three or four or five landowners that you're having to deal with now, keeping them from going negative, right? Keeping those
Yeah.
negative thoughts out. I think I love that. I mean, I think that's a really good mental picture that I put in my mind from what you wrote. So that's great. Well, okay, Amy, this is
Yeah.
your chance. So where can they find the book? Trying to put it there so
They
you
can
can see
find the
it.
book on Amazon.
Okay.
So it's definitely on Amazon. The audiobook will hopefully be out in the next month. So hopefully it'll be on Audible
Okay.
here not too long. You can also go to Winsome Farms, which I screwed this up before, but winsomefarmsks.com.
Okay.
Um, and that's our farm webpage. There's also FarmsFull.com. You can go on and find some information there if you want to go that direction. But
Awesome. Any in your services, do you want to elaborate on your farm full or anything that you provide? I really appreciate you talking about the stresses that you had personally, you know,
yeah,
with you know, that shows vulnerability, but that also shows great leadership. But any like, you know, farm full services, the services that you offer that other people on this that may be listening today or maybe listening in the future that, you know, you can help them with?
I love helping people in general. So if you have a place that you feel like you need help with, please reach out. If I can't help you, I will find somebody that will help you. But it doesn't matter if it's, you know, if I'm helping you with consulting on leases or negotiating or just stress in general, like I will gladly, if I can't be the person, find you the person.
Yeah.
Um, because I feel like the more we're connected, the easier it gets.
Yeah, agreed. It's great to have a network. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, on behalf of all of our employees at Oaken, I can't thank you enough for one, being a customer, but two, I'm just glad you're in our lives and have the ability to, you know, be in our network. How about that?